I want to thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, brand new Tuesday, 1st of August, a brand new month, 31st Tuesday of 2023. And it's just about 8:01 p.m. in the studios at Q95. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio. The on-air telephone numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Share the live, like our pages, get the latest breaking news and reviews on the big station. So tonight we continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. I'm joined tonight, very happy to be joined tonight, very distinguished guest, UWP political leader, financial economist, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, Dominica Freedom Party political leader, Mr. Bernard Ito, and economist, Ronald. They will dissect the 2023-2024 national budget presented to the people of Dominica by Finance Minister Dr. Irvin McIntyre on July 25, 2023. They will analyze it, review it, and look at its stated goals, whatever objectives and mission statements are in there, what it really contains and what it does not contain in terms of policies and strategies and programs and projects, and whether in fact it offers any prescriptions that are needed right now to fix the ailing economy that now exists in Dominica. I will ask them to tell us what needs to be done about critically needed investments in areas like manufacturing, like processing, like water and beverage industries, creating good paying jobs in the knowledge industries, increase our foreign earnings, and to drastically improve the real GDP growth for Dominica. I mean, real GDP growth, and to lift the people of Dominica out of the current widespread poverty and mendicancy that now exists. They will also have their say, I'm sure, on the diplomatic disaster in which Dominica has been plunged. They will articulate the major misfortunes I believe we're now facing with more visa restrictions that may soon come from the United States and from the European Union as well, following actions already taken by the UK and Canada after the DLP regime CBI program placed Dominica's regular passports and diplomatic passports in the hands of what they described as unsavory characters, crooks and criminals that our long-standing allies and developed countries consider to be national security risks for their countries because of the failure to perform adequate due diligence. And as a consequence, all kinds of money has been flowing from all kinds of opaque sources to all kinds of people in and out of Dominica, except, of course, to the ordinary Dominicans. They see none of that money. In fact, and they should be the ones who should be the main beneficiaries of the sale of their national assets, Dominica's passport. So, yes, gentlemen, I believe the chickens have really come home to roost. I will ask my guests to show the stark difference between people's lives under a one-man dictatorship and a functioning democracy that is based on free and fair elections on a level playing field. All people's lives are affected differently under a dictatorship versus under good democratic governance, and to show the extent to which more negative international collateral damage from the failure to implement genuine electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations and free and fair elections could create even more detrimental results from the international community. Let me remind you that electoral and campaign finance reforms and free and fair elections are meant to provide good and accountable government that forestalls carefully handpicked thieves from kicking back non-stop billions into overseas accounts and into political party campaigns to keep one party in office for 50 years, maybe, or forever. And be mindful that free and fair elections and democracy is beyond partisanship. Yes, it is beyond partisanship. The cause of nation building is beyond partisan politics. It's about the quality of our sincerity to regain the soul of our country. Too many stakeholders are sitting back, never sharing their views or wisdom or wealth in organized philanthropic or voluntary efforts. Sitting on the fence and hiding in the shadows is no longer an option. It's too late for that now. Most Dominicans believe that now is the time for uninformed action, for informed action rather, by the masses of the people who possess the people power. Time for them to take informed actions. And that is why we're here tonight to provide that kind of information. My distinguished guest, UWP political leader, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, DFP leader Bernard Ito, and economist Ronald. I'm sure they will share their views on these issues and help us decide on actions that we must take on the way forward to secure free and fair elections that will give us good, accountable, and transparent government and return us to the path of democracy, take Dominica from crisis to recovery, and restore the respect of the international community. I'm sure that my guests will also speak about the consequences of tainted elections, as referenced by the CCJ, that result in bad governance, bad consequences, undue foreign influence, and also and hope they will also speak to the prospects for Dominica's future economy and the good governance arising out of free and fair elections. And by the way, I'm advised that the Dominica Business Forum will host a critical consultation this Thursday, 3rd of August. That's this Thursday coming, from 9 a.m. at Pastor Randy Rodney's Truth and Grace Fellowship Global Church on Independence Street in Roseau, to craft the people's draft electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations for Dominica. This consultation will include all political parties, trade unions, other stakeholders, and is expected to produce a comprehensive report as a follow-up to the collaboration among all civil organizations prior to the 2019 elections. I understand that Electoral Commission Chairman, Mr. Duncan Stowe, Electoral Reform Consultant, Sir Dennis Byron, Attorney General Levi Peter have all been invited to participate in this consultation, along with representatives of church associations, political parties, prominent legal professionals like Mr. Julian Johnson, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, officials of political parties and civil society organizations will also be contributing. I'm sure the proceedings of the consultation will be live streamed on radio, Facebook, and YouTube. And I'm sure that the consultation is to focus on a number of things, but one of the things I believe will hopefully come out of it is an agreement on the proposed amendments to the draft legislations and the presentation of final people's draft laws and regulations that can go to the Electoral Commission and the Attorney General for consideration for submission to the Political Directorate for tabling in the Parliament for passage into law. So we all look forward to securing good governance that will stop the hemorrhage in our economy, take it from crisis to recovery, lift the people out of poverty and mendicancy, and improve their daily lives and livelihoods. My guests and you, our cherished listeners and callers who will talk to us later, will make the case for the urgency of arriving at a consensus now and go forward with one crystal clear voice from all political parties, trade unions, the private sector, civic organizations, the churches. Is imperative for the people's electoral and campaign finance reforms and regulations. These are what Dominica needs in order to bring about this level playing field and free and fair elections to help stabilize our economy. So wherever you are, in Dominica, in the region, and globally, please stay tuned, call in, join the conversation, get your answers to your questions, and be part of the solution. And I just want to reach out again, as we always do, a big thank you, much hugs, loves, and so on, to our healthcare workers or healthcare providers or frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, other public and private sector patriots, we welcome you all, every Dominican, friend of Dominica, to the Global View on Q tonight. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, every nook and cranny in every village, every community in Dominica, in the region and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console at Q95 directing the traffic. We will take your calls a little later. So the people's voice is always a priority with us. Please call us later. Let's get started. I want to go now to EWP political leader, financial economist Dr. Thomson Fontaine, to get the ball rolling in dissecting this 2023-2024 national budget, to examine the detailed provisions in straightforward language that shows the ordinary Dominican whether there is anything in it for them or if it helps them in their daily lives in any way, and to give us some alternative ingredients for a real dynamic, professional, national, progressive national budget that would improve the quality of life and living standards of every Dominican. Help us determine where we go from here, to see the urgency of getting there sooner rather than later. Take the people of Dominica out of this never ending cycle of poverty and mendicancy. So I'd like to ask you, Dr. Fontaine, please unmute your mic. You get the first word.
Yes, a very good evening to you, Sheridan, and to my colleagues, Ron and Bernard, and of course, Lambi, and to all of you who are listening uh, this evening to Q. A very good night to you. I'm not sure how many of you have been listening to the debate going on in the House, but from that first day, from that first presentation by Dr. McIntyre, it has only gotten stranger and stranger and stranger. And today I was just walking through the village, meeting people, talking to my folks and so on. And people were telling me, but how normal persons express that, and they were listening to the debate, and they realized that there was nothing much about agriculture from the Minister of Finance, but they were hoping that our PAL rep, given that she is in charge of a farming community. I mean, that's how people make their daily living. That's how people eat and feed their children. And they were saying, but there was no mention. She never mentioned agriculture, never talked about, what's going on in agriculture, nothing in it for us. And I think that is a general sentiment that you can extend overall, that this budget, I believe, is lacking in so many ways. What the finance minister tried to do is to paint a picture that is not there, is to paint something, to give an ultimate or give an ulterior view of what exists. In other words, he was painting something that everybody was looking at and saying, well, what is that? Nobody recognized exactly the numbers or what was in it for them. And I will go through in the next few minutes, very deliberately, very slowly, some of the areas I believe that we should have been in this budget, and the reasons why I think it should be. Because when you have a budget, you are hoping that it offers something to tackle the situation that the country is facing. The hope is that when the government presents a budget, it is in response to the current day realities, what it is that ails us, what are we trying to do, and what kind of policies can we put forward. Now, as a government, the only real policies that they have is fiscal policies that they can implement, because they're not able to do monetary policy per se, because that's controlled by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the grouping of countries. But when you look at the policies and the problems of of this country, you realize that there is a mismatch. That the issues that we are facing, the current situation in the country that we are facing, has not been addressed in this budget. And I'll give you examples of this. For example, you have a situation of extremely high unemployment in this country. There is nothing that goes towards addressing this. How do we begin to tackle the problem of unemployment? How do we begin to tackle the issue, in particular, youth employment? What can we do? What kind of measures can we promote? Can we bring to Parliament that can get the support of Parliament that we'll be able to do? Then there is the issue of the very low uh, growth in the economy. How do we generate growth? What kind of policies can we present that will help to generate some growth, that will help to increase the size of the budget, that will help to increase the size of revenues that the government is getting? What can we do about the high level of debt? How do we tackle this debt? Right now, Dominica has the highest debt to GDP ratio in the entire Caribbean region. It means that we have the highest. Our debt is now greater than all of our output produced. We're now at 109% of GDP. That is frightening. That has its own problems with it, because every year the government of Dominica has to find at least $100 million to repay debt. $100 million. When you consider that you're making about 160 million in VAT, 100 million is going towards repaying in debt. And then you have this huge debt burden.
Exactly.
In addition to that, you have
I
a
think
situation.
somebody's mic may be on. If you could turn off your mic so that we don't get a feedback.
In addition to that, you have a situation where you have a situation where 60% of your revenues to finance your capital expenditures, to finance even your current expenditures, 60% of that is based on the CBI proceeds from the CBI, which is now under attack, which is not sustainable. So it gives us a very important question. What are we doing? Why are we not tackling those issues? Why are we not tackling the issue of this unsustainable CBI debt? Why are we not tackling this issue of the high debt levels? In other words, why is the government not out there trying to see how they can reduce the level of debt, one, and also trying to see how they can not only reduce the level of debt, but also, get some relief on their debt payments, because that's going to cripple the country. How can we, for example, give some relief to public sector workers because they have not received any significant pay raise in over 23 years? How can you change that? How can you allow people to have an income that would allow them to be able to continue to at least maintain their spending of past years? All of those issues are not addressed. So when you look at the budget on its surface, it does not address the issues that the country is facing. It shows that the government either is not able or unwilling to address the problems. And they're hoping that the problems that we face, the problems of high unemployment, massive poverty, ballooning debt, low wages, they're hoping that all of those problems will somehow miraculously disappear. But it's not going to disappear. It is there with us. And they can only get worse the longer the government fails to take action. And that is where I have the biggest worry. I listened very attentively. I read through the budget presentation, and it is clear to me this government does not have the answers to the many economic problems that now faces Dominica. And everywhere that they attempt to address those issues, even in terms of agriculture. So they talk, for example, about having a 700, I think a $700 million agriculture economy by 2030. But there is nothing within the budget 7 years before that will start to lay the foundation towards achieving that. So yeah, it's a goal, but how do you get to that goal? They talk about reforms to the education sector, reforms to the legal sector, but how do you finance those reforms? How do you get the resources to finance the reform? So there is a lot of things within this budget, and as we go through the night, we'll talk more about it. But these are my opening thoughts, opening remarks, in that we have seen a budget that does not offer much hope to the people of Dominica. We have seen a budget that is devoid. It has absolutely no semblance of any serious approach to tackling the many, many problems that now confronts Dominica. And that to me is extremely worrisome. What this tells me is that our situation can only get worse. What this tells me is that poverty can only increase. The level of unemployment can only increase. Our debt can continue to escalate because even, Matthew, even with all of these incomes we are talking about, they're still going to be borrowing, according to this budget, they're still going to be borrowing $95 million this year. So the debt levels are going to continue unabated. So we're going to be in a situation where we are under an increasing burden of debt. We are facing a situation where our private sector continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller. The private sector has absolutely no relief by way of tax relief, by way of any kind of incomes policy, nothing that the government can direct the way of the private sector to allow them to employ persons, to allow them to take up some of the slack that now exists. So that tells me, Mr. Gregoire, that we're in for a very rough and difficult time in Dominica. We will continue to see growing levels of poverty, growing levels of decline in our real income, decline in our real wages, and it can only get worse from here.
Yeah, well, Thomson, thanks for that, for the opening remarks here. But I want to go quickly over to Bernard to keep the ball rolling. But Bernard, in addition to the range of things that Thomson just mentioned, clearly it is evident that the budget is void of those strategies and policies and programs that are going to really make that structural change, that deep structural change in the economy, right? That is going to, there's no real paradigm shift here, if you see what I'm saying. Now, Bernard, another thing I did notice, however, not only there was some of the presentation void of that kind of substance, but I find sometimes often the quality of the presentations and the decorum in there, it doesn't really, it's not up to mark. I listened to some of the presentations, and I found that some of the opposition people, they made fairly decent presentations. I didn't know much about some of them, but I heard the presentations, they were very decent. They touched a number of areas that need to be touched on. But I'm afraid that some of the presentations I heard on the government side, as Dr. Thomson Fontaine said, they did not really go to the heart of the problems that the country is facing. They did not really deal with the substantive nature of the issues, the deep-seated issues that are affecting the lives and livelihoods of the people of Dominica. They're not really tackling that deep-rooted poverty and mendicancy that we've seen in the country, and it's been there for a while. What are your thoughts? Maybe you could open your mic and give us your opening remarks on some of those there.
Sure. And let me say good evening to my colleagues on the panel here, and to you, Mr. G, and of course to Lambie and the console. And good evening to all the Dominican folks listening, as always, very loyal listeners every Tuesday night and online and on air. So welcome to another conversation. Thomson is correct. I mean, when you look at a budget, you really have to, especially the budget of a developing country, there has to be something to that budget that is transformational. To me, one of the criteria for the country, or budget of a developing country in particular, a small island development state, is something that is transformational, and an ongoing series of transformational events that can move us from underdeveloped to moving towards a developed country. And in order for that to happen, you have to have a coherent, strategic, innovative vision of what you wish the country to be. And not only must you have that vision, your budget must be able to reflect that vision, crafted around that vision, and fully explainable to any man on the street what the vision is. So to me, that's the first criteria of an effective budget for a developing country: a transformational vision and a transformational objectives and goals. The second criteria is, are we in fact transforming those visions, those goals, those statements, all the things that the finance minister stated? Are we translating the monies, the dollars, into real outcomes? And when we look at year after year, the budget that this government presents with some flowery language and some goals that sound nice, when we look year after year on the ground, do we see the translation of that budget into real outcomes? That's the second criteria. And then, of course, the third criteria, and Thomson dealt with that and talked to some of it, is fiscal responsibility. Is the budget, is the finances of the country being handled in a fiscally responsible manner? Is our debt being controlled? Is all the fiscal mechanisms being utilized to make us ineffective? What are our sources of revenue? What are our sources of spending? How balanced are those? And so forth. What is our tax base? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? What are the types of taxes that we collect? Are they imposing? Are they allowing growth, or are they retarding growth? These sort of fiscal responsibility questions, financial management questions, are integral to a budget. So the three criteria, to me, the lens through which we have to view these budgets: transformational, visionary. Is it? Does it translate money, dollars, into real outcomes that matter to people? And three, are we managing the budget in a fiscally responsible manner? And to me, on all three of those criteria, this budget falls flat. Certainly in terms of a transformational vision, it's very hard to identify what exactly the nation of Dominica is or wants to be in this budget. What is our fundamental approach to economic development? Where are we putting those monies? And we have small monies. We're financially constrained. We are a developing country. We have to have very strategic places to place that monies in large enough pots to make a difference. It does not really transform things to take a small amount of money and spread it as widely as possible. But in order to make those decisions, you have to have a strategic intent. You have to have a strategic plan of where is it that I'm investing? What sort of economy am I developing? And it's very hard to say from this budget, what sort of economy is the government pursuing? Are we in fact pursuing a transformation in our economic engine into do more knowledge-based work as the 21st century evolves? Are we evolving our agricultural sector into more high-end food as medicine angle? Or are we in fact pursuing wellness, eco-wellness as an option? And to show substantial investments that are clear to every man on the street, this is what matters, and this is the strategic plan that we're going to accomplish. And it's very difficult. In fact, it's not available to see the sort of transformational concept, the transformational ideas that are needed to develop a developing country. And Thomson touched on some of it. What is it that is going to create jobs? How exactly are we going to create those jobs? Show me the money and show me the program, the specific program to increase wages. And these are the things that we need to have in a transformational vision, and not only a transformational vision, but a scorecard. Clearly, this government needs to get innovative and modern in the way it presents budgets. We need to be able to see a scorecard and say, this is the program that's going to translate into this number of jobs, and to keep the government accountable of that every quarter and every following fiscal year. And so there's nothing in this budget that ties it together. No coherent plan. It's much of the same thing. If you look at this budget, it's basically the same talk of the past 10 years in new language, new dates, and a few new flowery phases, but basically promising the same thing. We will do agriculture. We will make agriculture more productive. We will make our economy more digital. We will invest in tourism. The same old things. No transformational vision, no innovative ideas. It's just same old thing recycled with no coherence. It's not even, there's no vision, and the vision that's presented is not coherent. Some of them are even contradictory. For example, the government says that it is all about, it's trying to drive entrepreneurship and to create jobs in the economy. Yet when you look at how much money is actually allocated to the entrepreneurship or the business development unit within the government, it is a paltry sum. So if you were truly interested in believing that entrepreneurship, individual entrepreneurship, citizen-based entrepreneurship is the basis of growth, then we should see a substantial amount of money invested, not only in funding the civil service, but in venture capital funds, in startup enterprises, in incubator facilities, and all the things that an innovative, creative government would do and put in place to create an ecosystem of entrepreneurship. And so they talk these words, but they do not, in fact, actualize these words or even have an idea really of how to go about converting it. And then when you look at the budget, the real story emerges of the intent, because the intent is simply not there. The other major component of this budget that I spoke about earlier, translating monies and dollars into outcomes, is abysmal. That aspect is even worse than the lack of vision, the lack of coherence, the lack of strategic intent in the budget. I can give you 3 examples that will make the point, okay? If you look at the 3 pillars or the 3 major investments or areas that the government says it has prioritized are healthcare, education, and security and justice. These are the 3 areas that the government has claimed it is prioritized for this year. It has prioritized it similar last year and the year before that. So that is the government's priority. That's the government where the government is pouring millions of dollars into. But is it the dollars that matter? Or is it the outcomes? And we must hold this government to be an outcome-based government that delivers outcomes. We do not care about the budget and the amount of money that you say you're spending and how you're spending it. The outcomes is what matters. And so what are the outcomes so far in these 3 priority areas? In the area of healthcare, I do not need to go into a lot of detail into simply saying most Dominicans fear the National Hospital. That should summarize it for you. Most Dominicans fear for their lives going into Dominica through either a combination of neglect, of professional negligence, of lack of equipment, lack of funds, lack of basic supplies, lack of accountability and quality systems that hold people accountable to performance and to mistakes to be reported and improved upon. All of those things, the socio-technical system within the hospital is very questionable, and they lead, therefore, to poor outcomes. And so while the government wants to cover our eyes and point us over there, look, over there, that shiny wall there that I just built, or these new steps here that I just polished, or this new shiny piece of equipment that I just dragged in from the basement, while the government wants us to look at those inputs and look at those things, it wants us to avoid and not even talk about the outcomes, which is what they are really responsible for. A devastating outcome that illustrates where we are in the healthcare system is infant mortality rates. Now, infant mortality rates is used globally as an indicator of how broadly available and effective and accessible your healthcare system is. All over the world, for decades, infant mortality rates have been declining. That is what has led to a real increase in human welfare. The declining infant mortality rates, people can afford to have less children because their children survive longer. Therefore, overpopulation is improved, and a whole host of positive things is reflected. Infant mortality rates itself is important, but it's also a reflection of the health of the health system. In Dominica, right now, as we speak, infant mortality rates are at an all-time high. I have looked at the data from the World Bank, and I'm sure the government will start coming up. In fact, just today in Parliament, they spoke about, we wonder about these numbers. But if you look at the numbers, infant mortality rate is the highest it has been in almost 50 years. And infant mortality rate, if I could share a slide here, I would show you a steep increase from when this government took over to now. A very steep increase. Dominica, therefore, is one of the few countries in the world right now where infant mortality rate is increasing. A problem that the developed world and the developing world thought they had conquered. A problem that we thought was behind us as a nation. A problem that the world thought was over. In Dominica, infant mortality rate is on a steep increase. The highest it has been since the early 80s, almost 50 years. And so that tells you that there is something broken in the system. Primary health care is not getting funded. Or if it's funding, it's not being effectively delivering service. Or we're not focused on the right outcomes. Or we're not doing the preventative care with families and pregnant women. We're not doing the things that we need to do to convert those funds into outcomes. And one is left to wonder, but where is the money going then? Where is the money going? But we know we don't need to answer that question to realize it's an important question, but we know on the ground results are not being realized. Cancer rates too. Every day we hear about some young person dying from cancer. It seems to be of epidemic proportions. We'd have to do the study to understand it. But certainly, it's very suggestive that cancer rates are on the rise in Dominica. Yet there is not a single allocation in the budget to one study, to one council, to one understanding of what is going on with cancer in Dominica and how to do about it. And so this illustrates to you that there is simply the outcomes in healthcare are not there to be had. Yet the government boasts we have an outcome comparable to many developed countries. Everyone knows that's laughable, and that is almost enraging for those folks who have to run down to Jolly's to buy a paracetamol or to get some gauze, or to get any simple supplies for that, to provide care for their family. And the government seems to agree that the outcomes are not there because, you know what? At every opportunity, they run away from Dominica with themselves and their families to seek healthcare elsewhere. So they know the outcomes are not there. They themselves are afraid of the national hospital. The second area that I will address is just the issue. They say they're invested into security and outcomes. But look at the outcomes in security and safety and judicial outcomes in Dominica. Again, it is abysmal. A place that used to be peaceful, where you could leave your doors open, where you felt safe, is now a place where I dare not leave my door open. I think every Dominican feels threatened, at threat. Crime is rising. Murders are happening. Just last few weeks, we had a few. Before that, we had some. Before that, we had a gentleman chopping his lady's neck off. And before that, we had more a shooting at a gas station. Everywhere in Dominica, our sense of safety is deteriorating. Yet this government says it's putting money into safety. What are the outcomes that it's delivering? Same thing with traffic accidents. Every day you hear of a terrible traffic accident, many of those due to road safety issues, non-enforcement of laws, and just a callous indifference sometimes to our fellow citizens. Yet, this crisis is going unabated. Nowhere in the budget does the government address the issue or shows how it's going to improve the outcomes in those areas. The final area is the judicial system. The judicial system is almost at the verge of collapse. Just last week, we had several prisoners released for murder because the system was unable to have a trial in time. The system was unable to process itself effectively. It was simply a breakdown of professionalism and seriousness in our system. We seem to be a magie country right now. We can't even prosecute cases. The systems are not upgraded. Technology is not upgraded. The staff is not hired. Attorneys are overburdened with a workload, and there is no mention in the budget of how exactly those issues are going to be addressed so that we can have good judicial outcomes on our island. But without a good judicial system, people lose belief in the system because they believe if you're powerful, you will get away. And if you are not, then maybe somehow you will be screwed for the cracks of the system. And so in all those areas, the government simply fails to deliver outcomes. Let me say this last thing, which is dealing with the fiscal responsibility aspect of it. So we looked at the vision, it's not there. We looked at the outcomes, it's clearly not there. If it's not there in those three major areas, then you can imagine the rest of the output of that budget. Fiscal responsibility. If you look at the budget, 60%, as Thomson indicated earlier, almost 60% is coming from CBI passport sales. A system that is under threat right now, not sustainable, and doesn't really create any productive capacity in the country. In fact, the CBI passport sale program is a moral hazard. What it does is it is just like you eating junk food. You're not exercising, you're not doing the right things, you're not getting stronger, you're not getting more capable of doing work. You eat junk food and you lay on your couch and someone gives you some money because they found a few stones under your house. They can sell it for money. You lay on your couch, you do. When the stones run out, you're in trouble because now not only no more stones, but now you are feeble, unable to work, weak. And that is the situation we are now. Dominica has not invested in human capital. its productive structure, infrastructure, its marketing infrastructure, its ability to innovate and to create. None of those aspects that are needed for a country's citizens to create wealth out of their imaginations and their strength and vigor. All of those things are enfeebled because we are depending for almost 60% of our national budget on rent income. The technical term for this is rental income, because we don't do anything productive to earn it. And so that's where we are in terms of this fiscal situation. The anemic nature of our economy can clearly be illustrated if you look at the amount of tax that's collected from individual income taxes and business income taxes. In the combination of those both areas is less than 10% of the budget. Can you imagine that? Less than 10% of your budget comes from the productive activities of your nation in terms of business profits, personal wages that are sufficient to cross the threshold of income. And if you look at any developed country, the United States, for example, over 50% of the budget comes from productive work of its economy. It's a dire situation. Then the next 30 to 40% of the economy, the budget comes from what? It comes from repressive and oppressive taxes. So they do not enlarge the productive sector, which is less than 10% of revenue. They try now to go to the ports and put extremely high import taxes and VAT taxes. They put VAT on everything possible. But those things, rather than grow an economy, strangle an economy, because an entrepreneur will not consider certain ideas as feasible if your port charges are too high, your VAT is too high, the product is too costly, no one has money to buy it, and so you lose that opportunity. And so in every way you look at how this budget breaks out, it is just, from a fiscal point of view, it is chaotic. Thomson covered the debt issue. I will not go into this in any detail again, except to say that with such a high debt ratio, it is even more alarming because it is a debt ratio upon the back of a very weak, unproductive economy. Some nations have high debt ratios, but they're able, with their economic strength, to believe that they will be able to service this into the future, and they can maintain the confidence of international bodies who grant loan. Dominica is in no such situation. We have a very anemic economy. We have an economy where 60% is about to shrivel up if, for some reason, CBI goes away. And then we're left saddled with one of the highest debts to pay back in the nation, after raising allegedly almost $9 billion in funds over the past several years. So in every aspect, this budget is a disaster. It reflects really the budget itself and the numbers and the words. If you dig into it, it reflects a disaster of governance, economic vision, and good principles of development in a country. And so that's about where we are. That's about where we are with this.
Yeah, very well said, Bernard. Very well said. Ronald, we're going to take the people's calls later, Lambi, of course. But when you start calling, we'll just make us a sign and we'll take the calls. But Ronald, when you're planning and you're budgeting, sometimes you do projections. You say, I have a vision, I have a mission statement. I set some goals and objectives. Some are more long-term, some are more medium-term, some are more short-term. But in essence, you make projections and you say, okay, that is where we want to be in 5 years, whether it is in terms of foreign earnings from exports in sectors A, B, C, D, in those products where we have any competitive international advantage. And so you make those plans, and then your budget now would reflect, you would put your money where your mouth is, where your thoughts are, where your mission and your vision is. So you put your money to that and you say, you have to create a yardstick to measure outcomes that you want. And to say, okay, this is the outcome that I want, result, and this is the yardstick I'm going to use to measure that I got that result. I don't think we've seen that in that budget, Ron. What I think we've seen too is that, let us say over the last, if you want to take the last five budgets, it's difficult for me to understand what was achieved in terms of a long-term plan, what was achieved from year to year. So you see figures coming out, but you cannot see, okay, so this year we achieved this year we achieved that, and that, and that in those years, and that's how we're building. Foreign earnings are not there. But the worst thing of all, Ronald, and I wanted to put that to you, is that what we're noticing is that in some critical areas where funds are allocated in the budget, a significant percentage of those funds are not even utilized. And you wonder why. And not only that, but you find that within months, further requests are coming back to Parliament for supplementary estimates. So you wonder why you're going back for supplementaries when you're not even utilizing what you have already budgeted for. Let me go over to you and share some of your wisdom on those things with us, Ronald. You need to unmute your mic.
Thank you very much, Sheridan. And I appreciate the contributions made so far, the high quality contributions. And I hope I can maintain that high standard. Sheridan, you seem to have
You need to maybe step back from your mic a little bit, Ronald, because we're not hearing you now. You may have muted your mic in some way.
okay.
Yeah.
You hearing me now?
I'm hearing you now.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Because the angle I would like to take on the subject tonight is not based on the year-to-year budget, but to start thinking in terms of an integrated development plan. 10 to 20 years conceptually, 5 years detailed integrated development plan, and on a yearly basis, you've got a dynamic budget that actualizes the integrated development plan. We seem to every year come with a 1-year plan and be very repetitive in nature and go around in circles. We need to go beyond that and start looking conceptually 10 to 20 years down the road where we'd like to be. And this government has been in power now for 23 years. So conceptually, we want to see how we want to be 10, 20 years down the road, and in a very detailed way, where we'd like to be in 5 years' time. And every year, we use the budget to actualize certain activities, to focus on certain areas to assist us in achieving that 5-year integrated development plan. We need to focus on our distinctive competencies and our natural endowments. We've got two major problems, two major challenges, one on the production side, one on the commercial side. And if we continue going on a year by year trying to solve our problems, we'll get nowhere. As you correctly said, even you got a year plan, you still come back for supplementary estimates, which shows major deficiencies in what's happening. So we have to find some way of developing an integrated development plan and to use the budget process to actualize, to effectualize that integrated development plan, or else we continue going around in circles. The working capital to effect the budget and the integrated development plan comes from the CBI program. We've got a CBI program, and we hear discussions going on about $7 billion yet to come into our treasury. And there's no response from the government. Nobody is saying that that is wrong. And that's exactly what has happened. And that in itself is a negative financial indicator. We see situations now in Dominica where banks are closing down, which is indicative of poor financial activities. NBD bought Royal Bank and attempted to buy First Caribbean. ECC disapproved. I'm not too sure if NBD is doing any work for First Caribbean. Republic Bank bought over Scotia Bank, and thanks to the trainings for that. So effectively, at this point in time, we only have 2 commercial banks operating in Dominica. We've got a very strong credit union movement, and we see the government is now attempting to attack the credit union movement. The oversized and incompetent government is imposing stringent fees on credit unions, ranging from 10,000 to 100,000. Your financial sector is under stress, the area that is occupied by the ordinary folks, you have put it under more stress. It's unfortunate that the government does not recognize the importance of a functional financial sector. I trust that the increase in fees for offshore banks, because they're increasing fees for offshore banks, insurance companies, and money service businesses are competitive. We are in a very serious position. The two major areas that I'd like to focus on is the production side and the commercial side. We've got a serious production side problem. But even we solve that production side problem, because the commercial side is now dominated by foreign individuals, be they Chinese, be they Haitians, be they Spanish, if we solve the production side, we'll still run into difficulties with more money in circulation, all the money will continue going out. And that's one of the major reasons that the banks are closing down. There's no demand for their services. Before, when Dominicans used to manage the commercial activities in Dominica, when they go to shop, they take an overdraft. They come back and they pay off the overdraft. Things are working well with them, they extend their house, they buy a piece of land, they take a loan from the bank. But today, the persons that are involved in commercial activities in Dominica are Chinese, Haitians, and Spanish. And they have no need for the commercial banks. And consequently, the commercial banks are under stress and they are closing down. I'm not clear in my mind who and how this country is being managed. It's a very technical area. It's an area where persons with training in economics and accounting are supposed to be guiding the politicians. Politicians are trained in English and psychology, and some of them have no training. Some are policemen, some were office attendants, and they have emerged as top-level politicians, and they are not being given the correct guidance. On the production side, when we look at agribusiness and to focus on agriculture, right now in Dominica, what is our main export crop? Do we have a main export crop in Dominica? Since after bananas disappeared, do we have a main export crop? We do not have a main export crop. We know Dexia is doing some work, but that work is not sufficient to keep our economy going. We've got rich volcanic soil and lots of water, yet we do not have a major export crop. We have allowed in agriculture, we have allowed our Haitian friends with their poor agricultural approaches, over fertilization, over chemicalization, and destruction of tree crops to dominate our local market. We see Haitians have ghettoized Roseau. They have taken over our markets, our commercial markets, our fresh fruit markets, and transformed them into mini grocery shops. You go into your market in Roseau and you see tin stuff, you see bottled stuff in your market. That never used to be so. So we are getting a certain level of transformation in our major agricultural area that is not in our interest. We must identify a major export crop and other supportive crops, given our rich volcanic soil and the great availability of water. We've got rich soil, we've got lots of water. So agricultural ministry has to find a way of identifying a major crop that we can move forward with. When we come to the other area of agro-processing, we've got an abundance of water in Dominica. We are currently importing water in plastic containers, while gallons of water are flowing into our seas. How ironic is that? How can we solve that problem? You are importing waste products, plastic bottles, and you're importing a product that you have in abundance, water. What can we do about that? We're supposed to have a big water industry in Dominica, but we continue importing water. Even from Antigua, we import water. And we look at water-based products like soft drinks, we import from St. Lucia. I remember in my young days, there were 2 soft drink factories in Dominica. There was a Coca-Cola and another factory, Juicy Factory. Today, we import water-based products, soft drinks from St. Lucia. How can the government engage some entity, given the excessive working capital that's available from the CBI program, to assist us in getting those industries going? Water-based products, water products, and more importantly, Kubuli beer. We are importing Kubuli beer from St. Vincent. Whatever happened to us? Whatever happened to us in Dominica? We reached a stage where from neighboring islands, where we should selling stuff to, we are importing water-based products from them. We need to focus on those areas very seriously. DCP was such a great agro-processing entity that Colgate Palmolive was forced to come in to purchase DCP. But Colgate Palmolive had their program in mind. That's a competitor, will come in, recover investment, and they get rid of them. Recently, we saw DCP is coming back again on stream. What can we do to get DCP to the level it was before? Because we have the working capital. We have the CBI money. We've got to find a way of using that CBI money to stimulate production in our country. So when, as was spoken earlier about, when we run into problems with CBI funds, we would have stimulated other areas in our country that would allow us to move forward. But nothing is done about that area. Benjo Simos, I understand, is operating from home. Whatever happened to Bello? Bello just disappeared. Banis Farms, interestingly, earlier this afternoon, there was a program on Q95, some young people program, and a young lady was talking on the new products that Banis Farms is introducing into the marketplace. And I was so impressed with that, which is very good. And we need to look at other agro-processors. Dexia, Dominica, Export and Imported Agency, what is their role? How are they assisting in developing products, in facilitating the development of products for export? Be they agriculture, primary agriculture, or processed products. We need to focus on those areas because Dominica is coming under increasing stress. And if we don't use our CBI money in a very judicious way to get those productive areas going, we'll find ourselves in a situation where we have no more CBI funds and we have no industry, no activity in Dominica. And I'm afraid we're heading down the path of Haiti. And we have to find a way of retrieving that situation. Fisheries. We're still involved in subsistence fisheries. I recall investing in a guy in Point Michel. And he said to me, 5, 6 o'clock, they go out early in the morning. 5, 6 o'clock, they are very tired. They've got to come in. Why can't we invest at least in free boats that can stay out there for 2-3 weeks and the smaller boats go out to pick up stuff and bring them back in? You have the support service in Dominica and you can take care of other import areas or the protein areas that you imported, substituted with fish. We need to look at that area. You've got a central area where you are taking care of those boats and you circulate those boats. You've got one in Newtown, you've got one in Pottersville, you may have one in Maho, and you circulate those boats. They come in, they are serviced properly, and they go back out for 2 weeks. And then you are able to get the amount of fishes that you need to stimulate your economy. You need to have areas where you'll be able to store the fish and to have areas where you could sell those fishes. You look at areas like Botanic Gardens, which was an agricultural development station. I understand all things happening in Botanical. I'm a child of Botanical Gardens. And when I go through, Mr. Ito also was a child of Botanical Gardens. And when you go through the Botanical Gardens these days, you wonder what's really happening there. That was a production station where you will experiment with all kind of different crops and you will give it to the farmers. You had a whole area called cocoa station, but all you're doing was cocoa. And you will send that out to the farmers, and your agriculture was moving in a very aggressive way. Today, I am hearing all kind of plans for the gardens, golf course, all kind of things going to happen in the gardens. I'm not too sure. And the fundamental problem is that we do not have an integrated development plan. We do not know where we want to be in 5 years' time, where we want to be in 10 years' time, where we want to be in 20 years' time. So we go year by year, striding year by year, and making the same errors over and over and over again. When we come to tourism, we look at tourism. We always have a problem with access. Finally, after 23 years, our government is going to build a modern airport. I happen to have been with Mr. Gregoire at the NDC, and in 3 years' time, we had all the designs, all the plans for an airport. This government, after 23 years, don't have any design, any plans for airport, but they're expending an excessive amount of money. They're bringing all kinds of equipment with no designs, no plans. And I'm wondering what's going to happen. At the same time, an extension is being done with Melville. It shows men are not planning, men are not looking down the road. Men are just going day by day, step by step, and not achieving anything in the end. So when you extend Melville Hall and you build a new airport, when the new airport comes into operation, what's going to happen to Melville Hall? What's going to happen to Melville Hall? What happened to the investment you've made in Melville Hall? Our cruise facility, we are yet to develop a cruise facility in Dominica. We were at a stage when our cruise arrival was greater than St. Kitts. St. Kitts built Port Zante, and today St. Kitts has reached the $1 million mark of arrival, of cruise arrival, and Dominica is still around 200,000. We saw what we had at Dame Eugenia Boulevard, all those little houses there, all those little shacks, and you wonder really what was happening. And St. Kitts has nowhere to go to in St. Kitts. And Dominica has so many different sites that cruise passengers can go and enjoy themselves. Just driving through the mountains, through the rainforest, that's an experience in itself. St. Kitts doesn't have that. And yet still St. Kitts, because of developing Port Zante, you could come into Port Zante and spend the whole day there. You're entertained there for the whole day. You don't need to go anywhere else and spend your money in Port Zante. But if you need to take a ride, you take a ride, but there's nowhere to go to. Yet St. Kitts have been able to reach a stage of 1 million cruise ship visitors, and Dominica is like 200,000. St. Lucia did the same thing with Point Seraphine. Point Seraphine was built in St. Lucia, and because of that, St. Lucia has been able to develop their cruise tourism. And the fundamental reason why Dominica cannot deal with those problems is because our budget, our 1 year plan, we continue doing every year a 1 year plan. We are short-sighted. We're not looking down the road 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And every year we use the budget to effectualize a certain area of that 5 year plan, of that 10 year plan. So in 10 years' time, we have certain facilities, we have certain development that can allow us to continue to grow. You look at situations, we are in the Roseau Valley. The Roseau Valley is one of our main tourism areas. And for some reason, guys decided to do a geothermal project in the Roseau Valley. Is that compatible? Can those two activities work together? And the guys are not even planning this. They claim now that the system that they have to bring the power down, what Dominica has, is not good enough. So they've got to get something else to do it. And guys have spent so much money to date on that geothermal project. And there's no end to the project. The fundamental reason is a lack of development plan. And until we can get the development planning under control, we'll always have problems. We look at certain tourism plans that have developed over the last few years using our CBI program. Kempinski has been developed over the last few years. And we heard the story about two investors in Kempinski. They walked away $30 million each before the project was completed, before anybody came into the place. And our ambassador in the US challenged them. He said, 5% of that is mine. And he filed papers in the court. Recently, we heard nothing at all. So the guy must have gotten his 5%. Is that what we need in Dominica? We've got Coulibaly Ridge and Secret Bay, and my friend Sam Raphael did this project, again, using the CBI funds. What isn't it there for us? What isn't it there for Dominica? And this is a fundamental area of concern. I'm looking at the areas that can contribute to the development of Dominica. The main areas I've looked at so far: agribusiness, agriculture, agro-processing, tourism, and I want to look at the cultural industry. When we started off the World Creole Music Festival, we had a vision. We wanted to develop a cultural industry in Dominica.
Ronald, can we come back to that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot to be said on that side of it now, the positive side, where we should be going, where we should have been heading, where the plans should have been going, the long-term plan, because after all, a government is elected for 5 years. So at least you can do a 5-year plan, because you know you're going to be there for 5 years. So at least you want to know you're going to achieve certain things by the end of 5 years. When we were at the NDC, we did planning. We knew what we wanted to achieve. We did a Creole Festival, which we knew wasn't going to break even in the first year, but we knew by a certain year it was going to break even, make a profit. And we knew we had planned it down to the point where we knew we wanted all the vendors to be able to make a living. And they made a living from whenever we had that event. So I just want to let's leave that for a little later on, because I want to come back to you later to look at that side, as well as Bernard and Thomson, because I'm sure we all have a lot to contribute to that side of the discussion. But Lambi, I would say that you can take the calls at any time when they're calling. If you'd like, you can give the numbers now, but we can take the calls when they come before I go back to Dr. Fontaine.
Good night. The Global View and Q, the numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are all local numbers. The international number or the overseas number, 305-432-9624. Let me run those again. 449-3095, 96 and 97, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Back to you, Mr. G.
Yes, thank you, Lambi. So just make me a high sign, and I'll just go to you whenever you have a call coming in. We have to take the people's calls. But Thomson, I wanted to come back to you with this, because the whole purpose. You want to take a call, Lambi? Let's take it.
Good evening, caller. Thank you very much for being there. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening.
Good evening.
Earlier today, I was listening to Q95, and there was a recording with your so-called speaker. What kind of disrespectful human being you all have in Dominica calling himself a speaker? What a shame. It's unbelievable. I cannot really walk around right now and tell anyone I'm from the island of Dominica. It's a bloody shame. The man was being rude to the member of parliament. It's a disgrace. And I don't know how Dominicans can tolerate that ridiculous nonsense. Have a good night.
Well, good night to you, and thanks a lot for that comment to remind us about that. You know, Thomson, that is something that I didn't mention earlier. And in fact, it's the decorum in there. I mean, how this thing is conducted, how it's managed, the kind of exchanges that you have there, the substantive nature or lack of it, of the content of the discussions. Because as we all say, we talk about making plans and real programs, the big picture, transformative things, as Bernard says. But when we listen to the debate in there, that's not what we hear. We hear about eyelashes and earrings and all kind of things. We're not really hearing substantive things. And one of the things I'd like to do, I think I did reach out some of the members of the opposition now in Parliament, because you have young people, you know, I'm pretty sure they have a different idea. I don't think they expected that was the level of the debate that they would be encountering in the Parliament, because they themselves came well prepared and they put on a good show. Actually, they were very substantive, very well prepared. The presentations were sound and very substantive. I was impressed. I'm trying to get them to come in to the Global View and Q maybe next Tuesday if it's possible. You want to take a call?
Hello.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good evening to you all and your panel.
Good evening.
I don't know, man. I think we, like persons like on your panel and persons like Lennox and, guys that really want to put country first and really be disciplined and showing statesmanship. I think we really have been talking too much. Whereas I appreciate that we have to express and talk about what's happening. But I think we need some real solid shoulders to really demand that we need answers, take on the streets and do what we have to do. Because I mean, we really settling for these guys will not change. These guys are really and have proven to us that the only way that we can get our beautiful country back and to get the young persons and people to see a level, to see the horizon where that can have success, that the poor man can rise, is for us to demand by taking on the streets. We have tried all kind of means. We have tried all kind of ways to be disciplined and have an approach to even try to speak to these guys to see if these guys will change the direction of their mentality of being so greedy. And these guys just take everything that intelligent people say. People that love country, because what you all are doing is because of love of country. Like Mr. Gregoire. Mr. Gregoire don't have to be involved in all of that. I mean, Landa and everybody. I mean, we still have to say, you all are still trying to keep hope for the young youth and for the generation to come. But we need to take on the streets. We have to be bold. We have to demand. That's why I said Mr. Charles Savre, because with the utterances of Charles Savre, when he speaks, you listen. That's why you make Charles Savre where he is, because Charles Savre would have been out of that. You would have maybe have, a 79 or what go on, People have to really demand to take on the streets and ask questions. I just don't know what keeping us from that direction, man. It's time for that, It's time. We try everything else. You all come with all kind of good programs, try to educate the masses, but something is just blocking the direction while they move on and think that we are weak and taking our kindness or weakness. Have a blessed one, you all, gentlemen.
Have a blessed one yourself, and thank you for that comment. Thomson, what Mr. Charles Savre had going for him at the time, he had an environment that was more enabling. People were independent, and people were strong, and they didn't have that level of dependency on the regime in office, and also he had this thing called a constitutional cool wash brigade. That is one of the things that he had going for him as well. Now, Thomson, I started to talk to you about these young people. Now, the caller is right. We've been doing a lot of talking, a lot of information and education, but I think some of it is really taking effect, because you can see young people are stepping up now. Many of them, new voices, new people are coming into the picture. And I was happy to see what happened in the parliament with these young people making their presentations. It was very, very impressive. And as I said, I would really like to bring them here for them to explain to us what was their experience in there, what they really thought about the budget, how they thought that budget was going to impact the lives of young people for the next 5 years and whatnot. How is it going to take them out of poverty, create the jobs and the foreign earnings, transform the structures of the economy, really dig deep into the productive sector. How, in fact, it is providing the venture capital and the entrepreneurial funds that Landa is talking about and so on, and Bernard is talking about. So, Thomson, I want you to go that in a little while after that. I want also to touch on that CBI, because as you could see from the budget, almost 60% of the budget depends on that CBI. And if the bottom falls out of that, we're in a lot of trouble. But the Prime Minister, Mr. Skerritt, made some comments about that in the Parliament. And as we go along, I will want to touch on one or two of those comments and to really ask the question, why now? Why is it we had not done those things long ago when they were the right things to do? Now that the British are down on us, the Americans are coming to you. Now we're talking about planning to do them after how many years? Thomson, let's go over to you.
It must be very discouraging for these young opposition MPs to be in Parliament having to deal with the level of debate, one from the other side, which I think is really laughable. When you have members talking about issuing of VIP tickets as a measure of a strength of an economy, people are not broke because they can afford to buy a VIP ticket for $200, $300 that only offers them an empty table Did they have to buy their drinks? I mean, it must be very discouraging. And on top of all of that, you have a speaker who, quite frankly, should not be on that chair. He's not helping the debate. He's not directing the debate in any powerful manner. His main task is to disrupt, interfere, and discourage people that have useful contributions and encouraging nonsense. So, when you think about it, Mr. G, it's a comedy of the of such proportions, except that we can laugh at it because it's a Dominica Parliament. It's supposed to be the highest making body in the land. It's supposed to be the body that is looking after government affairs and ensuring that good policies are made and that you really tackle those issues. But from what I'm saying, none of that is coming from the Parliament, and we have what we have at the end of the day. And it is really discouraging, to say the least, especially, as I said, when you see the level of poverty in this country, when you see the fact that people are truly struggling. People are having a hard time, Mr. G, making ends meet in this country. And to see the way our parliament is going on, it's really incredible. And then on top of all of this, the debt levels are piling up. We have so much money that we are told, and it is out there. Your debt levels are going up. People are asked to pay more in taxes. Very soon, we might see the introduction of taxes on petroleum, new taxes on petroleum products. We have seen them going after the credit union that has never been taxed ever before in the history of the country, looking for revenues in all sorts of areas where they should not be looking. Really what you need to do, and I'll give that as free advice, is to grow the economy. If you grow the economy, naturally, your revenues are going to increase. But if you noticed, we have not been able to increase revenues, tax and non-tax revenue beyond the $350 million mark in many, many, many years. This government is really struggling. They are truly struggling. And part of it is that they simply do not have the answers, and it is not, you can't just come into government and begin to understand these things. Some of us, it has taken us 30 years to understand a few things in economics, to understand a few things in finance, to understand how things work. And you don't just step into it and immediately understand it, especially if all your life you've been a medical doctor. You don't just come into the area of finance and believe you can understand, yes, you might be able to add the numbers, but do you truly understand what you're proposing? Do you truly understand the impact of the policy? Can you anticipate what a policy measure is supposed to bring to you? So these are normally very complicated issues, and the fact that we are seeing what we're seeing now is clear. I mean, why would you not do something in 2023 to boost the level of agriculture or investments in agriculture? Why would you not try to encourage the private sector growth? Why do you keep putting pressure on the private sector to the point where the majority of businesses are continuing to shut down or downsize or disappear altogether? It's because you don't understand the way the economy is supposed to work. You're supposed to be encouraging small business development. Ron spoke at length about the lamenting the fact or the absence of a water business in Dominica, and we can go into that. We can talk about the absence of an agro-processing industry in Dominica. We can talk about the absence of a truly great essential oils sector in Dominica. So much of these are missing elements, things which could be in place if there was just the proper direction on the part of the government, but it is not. And that Dominicans need to realize is the reality. We simply have no direction from this government. Either they don't, as I said from the beginning, they either don't understand or they are unwilling to do what is necessary to create jobs, to generate growth, to increase the level of tax revenues coming into the country, and to simply manage the affairs of Dominica in a way that is responsible and that can bring results. What we have instead is a wasteful government spending, a bloated cabinet that is way too large in terms of what we're getting for it. So we're not getting enough bang for our buck in terms of the spending on all of those ministerial positions. And the result of that, we are not getting enough for that. What we have at the end of the day is a ballooning level of debt and a crippling tax burden that can only destroy this country further. So, as I said before, we're in a deep dark hole. We're in a very bad place right now in terms of how this country is run, in terms of the performance of these governments, and simply their inability to address the issues that are confronting Dominicans. This government simply does not have what it takes to get this country out of the hole that it is in. Period.
Yes, Thomson, thanks a lot for that. But again, as I go to Bernard, I just wanted to comment on some of what you just said there, because, and that is why, I've always said that no government should be in power for too long. I think 2 terms is quite enough, frankly. If you do the same thing for 20 years consistently, why do you think you're going to get a different result in the 21st year or the 22nd or the 23rd year? Why should you be in there unless, of course, things are going so well? The people's lives are so transformed that the poverty disappears. People are growing wealth. People are happy. They are not dependent on the government. You don't have all these social welfare programs because people are getting poorer. That's a clear sign that the economy is deteriorating. It's doing very badly. It's anemic, as somebody says. If you have to keep increasing your social welfare programs, that is a bad sign. What I think is, but we have to take some courage, and I'm hopeful that the discussion that's taking place on Thursday will yield a result. And the result I'm looking for is to see all of the stakeholders come together. I would like to see that place, Pastor Rodney's church, full of people, full of supporters of the Freedom Party, supporters of the United Workers' Party, supporters of the churches, supporters of the GIC, supporters of the unions. In other words, the people of Dominica, in all their civic organizations, all of their interests, go there, speak their mind, come out with a consensus on the way forward. And out of that, what I would like to see happen is a revised draft laws that can be sent to an attorney to tidy that up. Then the people can use that as the people's laws that they want passed in Parliament. And then they can go out in their thousands, not in violence, but they go out peacefully in their thousands and say, listen, we're going to sign this thing. 10,000, 20,000 of us, right? We're going to sign up on it. This is what we want passed in our Parliament. Why? Because we want to have free and fair elections on a level playing field so that we can get a government of our choice that is really going to do the things that we would like to do to uplift our lives and fix our economy, fix our society. All these accidents taking place, all these murders, all these crimes, we want that out of there because our children don't have to be doing that, because they should be able to make a decent living without that. I mean, why not grow the cannabis industry and extract the essential oil, the oils from that, and let some of our young people get wealthy rather than have them smoking by the side of the road and blowing smoke in people's face and deteriorating their own health. The hospital, I'm sure, is getting quite a number of these people because obviously you put in smoke in your lungs, it is bound to impact your health. That to me is a bad option. It's a poor choice. Do something about the cannabis. Let the people extract the oils and convert that into this and high value product and sell it to the world. The world wants those products. They're good medicinal products. I wanted to say that, and Bernard to say too that, because again, and I want to link that budget process or the lack of it to the whole question of electoral reform, to the whole question of where do we go from here? Because we can't continue doing what we're doing. I mean, it's a disaster. Things are just falling apart around us, and we can see it everywhere. If you probably walk around Roseville and stand up by the stores, you're not going to hear many of the small, you're not going to hear the registers, the cash registers, many of the small businesses clicking. They might have 1 or 2 clicks in a day. The money is not there. Why? Because as somebody said, we're sending all the money out. It's being repatriated. We're not growing the productive sector that can export and earn foreign earnings outside. Instead, what we're doing is exporting the little money that we have there. And the third thing is that the CBI funds are not coming into the country. They're outside in accounts, obviously, because the number of citizenships that we're selling, I mean, it does not account for the money that's in the treasury, that's coming in the country. So it seems to me something needs to be done about it. I think you cannot keep a government in there so long. They get so used to it that after a while they stop doing the things that need to be done. It's not their fault, it's only human nature. So you need to do something and put somebody else in there to do something that can really fix up the people's lives. But Bernard, I did hear the Prime Minister in the Parliament saying to the Speaker, addressing the Speaker and saying a whole number of things that the government is proposing to do. He said, for example, we have discontinued the granting of citizenship to citizens of Kurdistan region in Iraq, in Russia, and in Belarus. We have this. How long have you been selling that? I mean, didn't you know the British and so on have been talking to you for so long? Why didn't you discontinue that all the time? You wait until they start putting visas on Dominican. They have to pay so much money now, and not even sure they'll get a visa before you can do that, because you know they're going to end the program and put the country a lot of problems. Why now? He said we issued regulations to restrict the changing of names by citizens. I mean, we've known that for so long. Why is it only now? I mean, we've had diplomats who have been arrested with Dominican diplomatic passports. Some of them have gone to jail. It's only now we're trying to say about that. People in the opposition have been talking, people like Lennox Linton, Thomson, Fontaine, all these people in the opposition, Johnson, Boston, Bernardito, they have been talking about that for so long. Why now? Nobody was taking them seriously. Then there's another thing I heard said, we issued notices of our intention, you know. We have not done it, you know. We issued of our intention to revoke the citizenship of citizens who made false declarations or misrepresentations regarding the application for visas in partner countries. You know, come on. I mean, you only intend to do it, you haven't done it yet. After all these years, if people have been asking you about it, you agree that these people have been talking to you for months now. You still haven't done it. He said, remember, we are supposed to have the finest due diligence in the world. We employed so many great people, but yet it's in addition to the due diligence checks conducted by the international firms in the US and UK along with the JRCC, we engaged Dominica's financial intelligence unit to assist us with the due diligence process. Only now we're talking about the FIU, Ronald Lander, I'm sure we'll have something to say about it. Only now all those things coming into play at the brink, when the thing is at the brink. He told the Speaker in the House as well, we have striven to remain on the cutting edge of the industry, changes and requirements, and have been responsive to the requests and concerns of partnering countries, government, and other entities. If you had been responsive, they would not have terminated this visa thing. You were not responsive, and that's a problem with us. We're in denial. And he says, I am disappointed that in the eyes of the UK government, we were slow to respond in a comprehensive manner to concerns that impacted the security and other interests of that sister country and esteemed trading cultural ally. You cannot act as though you're surprised. I mean, how can you say, I am so disappointed that in the eyes of the UK, in your own eyes, you didn't see that you were too slow in responding after all these years, everybody telling you about it? So I'm just pointing out those things, Thomson and Bernard and Ronald, to say, I mean, if we're talking about a budget which relies 60% on the CBI revenue, and that is how we're treating the thing, are we serious about this thing? So now we are talking about in the upcoming months, we'll recruit an internationally vetted and respected management oversight team to advise on and oversee continued changes to the management operations. Didn't we just change a manager? I understand we have a new manager. What is it talking about an international team? We'll revoke the citizenship of those found to have made false declarations. You still will revoke, you have not yet revoked them. So I'm just saying that also we will address and reduce the number of agents and promoters of our CBI programs. Guys, we've had people in a market in Punjab, in a fish market or something. I saw people selling fish. A fellow with all kind of passport and we've been and seen passports for sale. I mean, come on. I mean, you saw that so long, you have to wait for the British to tell you you need to do something about it. You're talking about 60% of the revenue in your budget. I'm going to come back to that, but Bernard, I wanted to go to you to say a reaction. But you want to take a call, Lambi, before I go to Bernard?
Let's hope he's still there. He's been here for a while. Good evening, caller. Global View and Q. Go ahead, please. Oh, we lost him.
All right. Well, you just make me a sign. And the caller, sorry about that call. You can call right back. We'll take your calls. We really want to take all your calls tonight. Sometimes we get a little carried away. Let's take the call, Lambi.
Hello?
Yes, caller, please go ahead. Global View and Q.
This call is for Dr. Fontaine. Dr. Fontaine, is Dominica getting money for the passports that they are giving out? Because according to the idiot who calls himself a speaker, passports are not being sold. That's what he said right in the parliament. Passports are not being sold. So what happened? The passports are being given away for nothing? The books are open Dominican foot. I've been saying Maca. Thank you.
That's for you, Dr. Fontaine. You wanted to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, it has been sold. We are in the passport selling business, period. You're giving people passport, they're giving a certain amount of money for it. You're selling your passports, period. We call it CBI, we couch it in different ways, but at the end of the day, that is what you're doing. You're giving a passport in exchange for a certain amount of money. That's it. Call is correct.
I'll take another call, Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
I was so disgusted about that speaker one of those days when that senator was doing his presentation, when he telling him that passports are not sold. So what he's telling us, the passport is given away free or they redeem it. And I mean, to be lying for people like that and the whole world is good. To me, that speaker should even come out on this year. He don't want to be in that chair.
Well, thanks a lot for that, ma'am. I appreciate that. You want to take another call, Lambi?
Yeah, the person was there, but the person's left. So go ahead. Go.
Here's what I just wanted to say to that, Lander and Thomson and Bernard. Go ahead, right ahead. Take the call, Lambi.
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, Lambi, and everyone in the house. Good evening.
Good evening.
And I'm glad Ron is there tonight too. We keep talking about the economy, and we have a fundamentally wrong problem in Dominica. There's no policy economically in Dominica. We're running a merchant class economy run by a few Syrians, and the government has no policy aimed at wealth building. We can talk all these things we want to talk, Thomson, but we need a fundamental shift in economic policy, from government in terms of policy, in terms of real thing, in the parliament, bro. A change, fundamentally, We cannot have this group of Syrians keeping control of our economy and think we're going to build wealth. We cannot build wealth on that economy model. It cannot work for us. So it's some strong language and some fundamental things that we have to talk about that we keep evading. But this merchant class economy cannot develop Dominica for the benefit of most Dominicans. It cannot work. Please.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. But you take another call, Lambi?
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
All right. So here's what I wanted to say. I mean, the merchant thing is not troubling it, That's not the problem. Ronald Lander and Thomson Fontaine, they identify the problem. Zed is right. I mean, when you do a budget, you don't think short term. You're there for 5 years, do a thing for 5 years. And that is the kind of economy I want to have. I want a predominantly productive economy. And you want to take a call before I go on?
Yes, on the overseas line. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. It's me calling a second time. I had to. Let me say, I was listening to one of your callers talking about the economy. Dominica have always been a place that, like everything else, with knowledge, wisdom, and people increase and, economy, different directions, especially that global village. But the thing with Dominica have always been a country 20 years ago that stood firm, in the region, firm. It's true we had the bananas and we had the agriculture and stuff. Even on the United Workers' Party, I saw poor people could afford to have a life. It's after that election under this administration, these guys with Rosie and they came in and these guys took the opportunity and they had that senior council that look at our our legislation and they see how they could manipulate the constitution. Oh my God, I was not trying to thought. It's these guys, that doing that. Some callers call and talk about, merchandise and all kind of stuff. It's we that have to get rid of that bad management we put there for 23 years. And with all the talking and all the kind ways, we try to give him the olive branch. And he has just take good, intelligent people for food and think that he can manipulate a nation for his own personal gain and a gain of few. We just have to demand that it's enough. Dominica have always been a Dominica that was up in the windwards and in the region. Is this guy make a fool of us and get so greedy? A few of them get so greedy, like the Duncan Stows, I'll call him, Duncan Stowe, he's supposed to stand up firm and give us electoral reform, and these other guys, the Lawrences, they all benefiting and right now we think that we're so backward. We need to just get rid of these guys, get them out. They work for us, the people. We need to get rid of them and get people that can manage the country. We just settle in for what they do. And then we keep on with all kind of reasonings and all kind of this and that when we just have bad management and people are there for their personal gain. We need to get them out. That's all. We need to get them out by all means that we can have our country where it has to go. Because we have tried it the disciplined way. Lennox have tried to be a statesman for many years. Look, Thomson there, look at the victimization. Look at all the wickedness they did to people who standing for country. And we're still there. We need to demand. We too great a people for the people that in power. The people who take our country in their hands and think they can do what they want. Dominicans are not benefiting from nothing. The Chinese come and they talking to us like fools in our country. You have one man managing our CBI money and think he can handle the country and this guy can land it Dominic how you want, do what he wants and no question that. It's time for us to ask questions and take on the street. I'm talking as a Dominican now. We need to take on the streets and we need to be firm and we need to have courage because nothing wrong in asking questions about your country. This is our country. Too much of the other people, everybody have a different idea and a different stuff. The idea we should have is one goal. The one goal is to get these guys out. They did enough. Enough is enough.
Thank you, caller. We do appreciate it.
Yes, I was saying that I firmly believe that no government should stay in there forever. I think this government has been there too long. And I think really the people of Dominica have to understand you must change your government from time to time because, power corrupts. Absolute power will corrupt absolutely. The fact of the matter is not the merchant sector that is our problem. We've always had the merchant sector and they create a lot of jobs. All right. The fact of the matter is, while we had the merchant sector, we also had a strong manufacturing sector. We had DCP, we had Paul's Pastorone, we had Paul's Plastics, we had Candle Industries, you had all these companies that are producing Bello, all of those companies that are, we had Ross University, in making a big impact in terms of foreign earnings. The problem is that when you keep a government too long, they get complacent and they allow those things to die. I heard somebody say once, if not passports, then what? That's not a question that we should be asking because when in the heyday of bananas and agriculture, there were no passports. St. Vincent is not selling passports. They're getting by. The fact of the matter is we have to redirect our thoughts to the productive sector. Can you imagine this, Thomson? If this 7.9 or 8 or 9 billion dollars that is outside in some account somewhere were to be in here doing what we're talking about, providing the venture capital, providing the kind of resources that the young people need to build the industries. Ronald, you heard one of them talking. We have a program every Tuesday and every Thursday, free of charge for all these young people to promote all the wonderful products that they're making. That is what it's there for. We need to support these young people, encourage them, take some of that money. Stop telling them to go and take loans and so on and provide some matching credit grants or some kind of thing for them so it's going to soften. They don't have the collateral to go to a bank and to look for $100,000-$200,000 and say they're going to find collateral. They don't have it. You have to come with creative financing for them. Let that money come into the treasury. Use that money to build your industries, transform the structures of your economy. Plant 1 million coconut trees. You're selling coconut water all year round. They're very good for you. You're using the coconut husk and you're making rope from it. Go back to your bananas, sell all your bananas. People are eating a lot of bananas in the world still. The green bananas in particular, they're very good for you. Take the stalks of the bananas, make rugs with it, do something, no waste. This is the point. We know breadfruit is such a big deal is a real great food. Why are we not doing that instead of just focusing on building hotels? That makes no sense. We're not transforming the structures of the industry. Why are we not looking more at the knowledge industries like Bernard is saying? People can stay in Dominica, young people who can use a computer, and they can make a lot of money every month just working for some company in the world online, right? Why don't we take some of that money and build the cannabis oil industry? A lot of Dominicans will get wealthy from a lot of people will get healthy from it as well. I'm just making those statements. It's not the merchants that are our problems. Our problem is to build our productive sector. That is what we want to do. So, Thomson, your thoughts on some of that? Your mic is muted.
Yes, certainly, and I'm sure Bernard and Land as well can weigh in. One of the problems that we have, Mr. G, is the inability of this government to really generate any kind of worthwhile because what the government really needs to do, we're not asking the government themselves to go out there and open factories or do all of that, but they need to create the enabling environment. They need to encourage foreign direct investment inflows. They need to be able to say, well, we are ready for business. But what we found is that this government has the ability to waste a year. They've spent several $1 million into geothermal. At the end of it, we have not generated not one iota, not 1 megabyte of energy has been generated to power anything, not even a naked bulb, but we've spent millions of dollars. And there's this very wasteful attitude that this government has adopted to the point where we are not seeing any kind of real investment in anything. And even where they put the money is misplaced. That money that has been wasted on geothermal could have gone into developing solar and wind and other forms of natural energy that could be working now to the best interest of the Dominican public. But no, they do those things that are shrouded in secrecy, turn over millions and millions to foreigners, bring in foreign workers, at the detriment of our workers. And by the way, I drove through that Cassibros Road, and already the road that was paved a month ago is already eating up. The water did a number on this road. So we have cheap, inferior work being done. And at the end of the day, you would think that the road would at least last. And then I compare that to driving on the road on the east that has been there since 1986. And it is so nice and still hardly a hole in there in some parts of it. But we have this new work that's been done by foreign entities. And I tell you, I was shocked to see the water went under and has started to lift entire portions of that road, Mr. G, in the Cassibros area. So before the road is finished, it has been destroyed. But that's what we get by this government that has no faith in its people, that somehow believes that foreigners are better at getting these things done than Dominicans are. And so at the end of the day, we are paying a very high price, not only in terms of the monies that are going out, but also at the end of the day, we have inferior stuff being done. We have no focus on anything that really matters. And I'm telling you, man, it's time to go. I'm at a point where, like all of our callers, I'm fed up. I believe it's time for the government to really say, they've tried their best, but give up. They need to just agree that this is not for them. They've done enough hurt, they've done enough damage, and that's what it is. Make no bones about it. This government is responsible for totally destroying this Dominican economy. Not only the Dominican economy, but they have destroyed the moral of our people. I saw a circular going out today from Mr. Titus Francis, the manager of Public Works, telling them that they can't pay them this month end. Yet they find the monies to pay these foreign workers. So this complete demoralizing of our people, this complete casting aside of what the Dominican spirit is. I mean, they've killed the Dominican spirit, they've killed the entrepreneurship spirit. You can count on one hand the number of new businesses that have been set up in Dominica under this particular government. Instead, they have destroyed companies that were there for hundreds of years, like Bello and DCP that was there for over 60 years. So that is the reality that we have, Mr. G. How are we going to deal with this? How are the people of Dominica going to deal with this? Are we just going to continue to tie our hands and say, well, okay, sapu fair, or are we going to do something about it? And I think we need to be speaking in increasingly stronger terms to this government, that they need to, step aside.
Well, like we've said, Bernard, I mean, I don't subscribe to any government staying in power so long. I mean, it's going to be, you'll get the result that you're getting now. Bernard, don't you think maybe at this time, all of the opposition forces, all of the civic groups and organizations, which is everybody, should agree that maybe it is now time for a change of regime, to bring some new ideas. All the ideas we're talking about, the callers keep telling us every time we have a program that all of these ideas will never be implemented by this regime in office. Why? Because they've been there for 23 years and they have not done it. What makes us think that they will do it? It seems to me, now that we're talking about electoral reform to create a level playing field for free and fair elections, I think all of the opposition forces that they put there together and decide it is reasonable now for us to have a change of government, with some new ideas to improve the people's life. What are your thoughts on that, Bernard?
Well, that is very clear. I mean, all of these things are in fact interrelated. The poor economy we have, as well as the electoral reform or electoral system that we have. Every institution in Dominica has been captured by this government. Every institution. There's no institution that is independent and functioning as it's supposed to function in a free and fair society. I mean, the point of institutions are to safeguard against the power of government, to ensure the individual rights of citizens, to ensure a free economic environment, so that citizens as a whole, through the apparatus of institutions of governance, can have the opportunity to define their own lives and to gain prosperity in their lives, or to express themselves however they feel in life. But this government has captured every institution over the 20-something years. And that's another reason why governments need to be changed frequently. When a government stays too long, it has the ability to appoint to every institution its cronies, to rig the system in every way possible so that the institutions no longer functions as they should. In fact, it's a well-established academic situation. People who have studied political science tells you that it is almost inevitable that institution capture will happen when you leave a government in too long, and that is one of the major impediments to democracy and a free society. And so you must regularly remove people from power to prevent them from totally capturing every institution that reigns in and controls the power of the government and represents the interests of the people. And so certainly, I think it is very clear to every political opposition, and I think increasingly clear to every Dominican, that really these things that we're talking about, appealing to the government to have a 5-year plan, to have a comprehensive plan, to be imaginative and innovative, to put self-interest aside and work for the people, to find new ways to stimulate the economy, to do all the right things, to show due procedure and all of those things. All of those things that we're appealing to this government for, I think, is necessary. We need to say that, but let's face the facts. The only way we dig Dominica out of this hole that it is in, is to replace this government and to clean up the mess that they have made, and to put in people who are competent, people who are ethical, people who are believe in country and believe that they should do work for the country, not for their own self-glorification, or certainly not for their own self-enrichment, but should do things for a country because that is the duty of a good citizen. That is the duty of a person who has matured in life and realizes that at some point in life, we have come to the point where we have to give. Life is a process. Life is an unfolding. Initially, we take from our parents, we take from our society who educate us, we take from those who help us get started in business, we accumulate, we're invested in. I think every mature person at some point comes to the realization, I have prospered, I have grown. Now I must be the one giving. I must be the one giving back. I must be the one investing. I must be the one taking the next generation through that process that I came through. And that is the spirit which I think we need in our leadership at all levels, not just at the political level, but at every level. We need Dominicans who are dedicated to the principle of giving because it is our duty to give. Giving because it is the right thing to do. Giving because acquiring another dollar should be less important than living a good country, a legacy country, something that one can be proud of and your grandchildren can be proud of you, that you worked to develop not just a country, but an Afrocentric country, a country of descendants of once enslaved people who can now develop and have the opportunity to establish in the world somewhere where Black folk are prospering, are free from corruption, are free from doing corruption, can stand in the world as a proud example of Black independence, Black capacity, and to be able to stand in the world and to be something. And that sort of vision, that sort of idea, that sort of concept is foreign to this government. And so we cannot reform those guys. They are not mature enough. They are certainly not competent enough. Are certainly not have the integrity necessary. The core of those guys are just, it is beyond repair. And now what do? They put on a secondary caste that are hangers-ons, essentially. They don't really have anything to contribute in terms of leadership, ideas, innovation, contribution, understanding. As Thomson says, it takes years and years and years of mental preparation to be able to contribute. But if you look at the budget presentation and the cabinet, there are few people there on the government side contributing anything. They wear fancy hats. They talk about SIWO. They talk about earrings. They talk about all these things because certainly what else are they going to talk about? There is very little that they can contribute. They talk about VIP and empty tables because that is the content of their minds. It reflects to you the vacuity in there. It's not necessarily that they're not intelligent or not decent individuals, but they simply have not acquired and applied themselves to acquire the necessary knowledge, capacity, experience, the necessary maturity, the necessary mindset of contribution to get into government and to make a difference. And that's what we need in Dominica now. At any time, developing a country, running a country and managing a country is a hard thing to do. It's hard work, smart work, disciplined work, ethical work. But especially for a developing country, that challenge is even more multiplied. And then what do you need to get a developing country to move? You need the best of minds. You need the most people dedicated to moving that country ahead. The people with the most dedicated lack of selfishness. You need statesmen and women who can do this. And that is what we lack. At the bottom of this issue is the character of the people who run our country, is the character of the people to make a difference in the lives of Dominican people, to believe in Dominican people, to believe in Black folk are capable of fantastic things, to lift our eyes up higher than we have it now, to have vision, to believe in great visions. Why can't we say we will set a goal to be at the level of Singapore in terms of GDP? Or why can't we set our goals to say, we can be a technological nation. We can be an innovative nation like Israel is. Why not? Why do we limit our vision? Why do we limit our dreams? we can be a lot bigger, a lot more productive. We can be wealthy nations. And we
Well,
need to have that vision in mind by replacing those folks and getting people in there who can realize those dreams.
here's the thing, Bernard, and I want to come back to Ronald too. Here's the thing that all is not lost. What they say is better late than never. I think there is hope. I agree. It's time to have a new government, a new regime, new people with new ideas, all right? A new energy, a new thirst for results in an organized and structured way to build an economy, build wealth, build a society of strong, independent people like we used to be. But all is not lost because I listened to the parliament and I heard the young people in the opposition. I heard Chesfa, I heard Lorraine, I heard Sean, I heard Anthony Charles, I heard Paris. I heard all these young people. They made substantial presentations. They were right on cue. That's what I'm saying. I listened to them and I listened to the other people talking about some other things. I couldn't believe it. It's when I listened to the speaker, for example, telling telling Sean Douglas, well, you cannot come to the parliament and say the people are selling passports. I'm not so, he said it is illegal. I'm not sure which law he's quoting. I'm not an attorney. I don't know which law Sean was breaking. I'm not so sure whoever is selling passport. I'm not sure which statute, which criminal statute that they break. I'm not sure. But maybe he knows. Maybe he needs to explain to them in the House which particular statute that is referring to why you cannot say. Because Thomson, I mean, Ronald, you're a fellow, you're a smart fellow. You know, if you have a commodity, anything, and you give somebody to give you money, you sell it, right? You sold it to them. Now they have it, and you have your money. All right? I'm not so sure which statute he's talking about, Ronald. But you know what I would really like to do in terms of the action that our callers are calling for? We can make a start, Bernard. On Thursday, when the Business Forum is having their event, that consultation, I would like to see the United Workers' Party bring their followers there full of the room. I'd like to see the Freedom Party bring their followers full of the room. The churches bring their followers, the unions bring their followers, the civic organizations, bring your followers, fill up the room, and arrive at a consensus. That is these are the laws that we want. I believe Justice Dr. Irving Andre, Julian Johnson, a number of people presenting. I think Justice Irving Andre may be one of the featured speakers there. I look forward to hearing him. He has already identified for us a series of sections that have to be changed, and he gave us what can be replaced in those sections in the draft laws presented by Sir Dennis Byron. I would like to see us go in there. Rome was not built in a day. Everything not going to happen at the same time. Nothing is perfect under the sun. You have to start somewhere with something. I would like to see us go in there, full of the room. People say, okay, that is what we're going to start with. Give that to an attorney. You have brilliant attorneys around the place like Noel's Night. Brilliant young people. Carol is young people around. Let's get an attorney, put those things in the document. Then all of the people have contributed. That's the people's laws now. You take those draft laws and then you say, okay, this is what we as a people want. So you get a petition signed by 10, 20,000 people. And you go out and say, this is what we want our government to pass in the parliament for us so that we can have free and fair elections, level playing field. Let us change our government, have new people with fresh ideas in there to give the country a fresh start, give the young people some new hope. If we can start from there, we'll have achieved something. It will be a start. That's how it starts. Ronald Lander, I believe you have some additional thoughts on some of the things that you wanted to share, but you didn't have time to make all of those contributions in your first presentation. Now might be a time to do it because when you're having fun, the time goes by very quickly. So you can unmute your mic, Ronald, and you might want to make your further contribution.
Yeah, the first thing I would like to say is when I came back from my master's degree in Canada, that was 95. The first task that was given to me by Julius Timothy was to review the economic citizenship program. And at that time at university, we were talking a lot about business program reengineering. So I come up with the idea of a re-engineered economic citizenship program. And I did extensive research. Julius Timothy said to me that he wanted a document in 2 weeks' time. I said, so you can't have. I'll give you an outline in 2 weeks. I did some extensive research and I produced a document captioned the re-engineered economic citizenship program. And I remained in this service for quite a while, wanting to make my contribution and to ensure that we're going forward properly in that program. And the guys just excluded me all the time. Guys never took me on. It was so unfortunate. I see guys are making errors and errors and errors, and they're not taking me on. So it's unfortunate that in the small-mindedness in our management system, there are persons who want to help, who want to continuously make a valid contribution. And the people in power said, you are not one of us. We don't want you around. I'm in the middle of the road. I'm apolitical. I'm prepared to help in any way, shape, or form. I recall in the 4th year at the NDC when the government changed and Mr. Gregoire decided, okay, I was associated with the government, I need to go, and this is the best man to take over. Guys were ganging up against me. Guys on the board were ganging up against me. And I was able to come into the boardroom with a document proving them wrong. From that, all hell broke loose. I did the 4th World Creole Music Festival. I was the chairman and still the financial director. And as soon as the festival over, the chairman tell me to take my leave till the end of the program. And this chairman is a businessman. How could you get rid of your financial controller before he's developed your financial statements? So they never had any financial statements for the 4th year. And it's unfortunate that we did not make the best use of our people. And we continue making that error over, and especially this regime. They're not tapping into the skills that we have. And we've got a lot of skillful people who are committed to make their contribution in the interest of the development of Dominica. And we need to get into a situation, as you all have been saying, where we can tap into our best resources. This is the best man for the job. This is the man who's done the training in that area. So let's engage him. And let's ensure that we get the optimal output in the interest of Dominica. Some of the areas I just wanted to speak about very briefly in terms of the productive area is the cultural industries, where we could develop a cultural industry in Dominica based on the World Creole Music Festival and the Caras Festival being done now by Leroy Wadiko Charles. We could use this as a building block to develop our cultural industry, not only the music, but the dance and all the cultural expression. Mr. Gregoire can recall in the earlier days, when we were doing the festival, you found that ballet groups and quadrille groups were getting a contract to go to Matic and go to perform and making their money. And this is how you want to develop your cultural industries. Health tourism. I hear talk now about a new medical school. We had Ross, and we did not take care of Ross. We allow Ross to go to Barbados. We should be engaging Ross in such a way that we have a university hospital in Portsmouth. There's a talk recently about a marina. After how many years? You're talking about a marina? You should have a marina for a long time in Portsmouth and now talking about doing one in Newtown. That would create so much economic activity in the Portsmouth area. When guys come in with their yachts and so on, and they go on their tours and they buy food, they buy agricultural products, you create a lot of activity in there. And only now, guys are talking about it, they'll tell you they're going to actually do it, because you don't have a plan. And even when you're going on a year-by-year basis, you just go around in circles. You never get anywhere. Information technology. You make mention of information technology. It's a very important area. And I recall in my days at the NDC, we engaged the CDB to do a study for us on information technology. And they said that we have very intelligent people in Dominica, and where we should go is software development and programming. Why can't we engage the Chinese government in the discussion to assist us in developing an information technology industry in Dominica? All the Chinese want to come and just sell inferior products to us in Dominica, get involved in construction, put down inferior buildings, be it apartment buildings, be it hospitals, be it whatever, inferior buildings. Please, Mr. Ambassador to Dominica, assist us. We are Dragon Windows. Dragon Windows is very productive, and the windows stood up to the last hurricane, which was very good. But we need more industries like that from the Chinese government. We need that help. And even if we deal with the production side problem, because the commercial side is dominated by foreign nationals, if we get production going again in Dominica and we shop in the Chinese shop, we shop by the Haitians, and nighttime guys go by the Spanish, the money just continue going out. And interestingly, what I have noticed over the last few years, there are quite a number of Dominicans on the roadside trying to sell goods and services with their vehicles, with their tents and so on. They're on the roadside. What can we do to assist and develop those persons
Yeah,
so that
well,
they can, yeah?
well, Ronald, I think the question, we've answered that. You see, if you've been doing this for 20 years and more, and this is the results you have now, don't expect to do it for the next year, in spite of whatever is said in that budget. For there to be any change, you're going to get the same result. So I think the fundamental thing is to have a change of government.
Yeah,
New
I
people,
agree.
new people with new ideas, a new approach who are going to embrace everybody, let all ideas contend, use the best people in the best places, no square pegs in round holes. You make your plan for the next how many years and you work towards a
And you use your good people, you use the right people to actualize the plans.
does it
And
should
the
not
last point I would like to make, Mr. Gregoire, the last point I'd like to make is that you look at your security services in Dominica. Haiti is now governed by gangs and vigilantes. And Haitians provide security service for Dominica in all different areas. How does it add up? How does it add up? Who is managing that situation? Can we use retired police officers to provide those type of security services? People coming from areas where gangs and vigilante and guys stores cannot open in Haiti, schools cannot open, hospitals cannot open, and Haitians are coming in Dominica, flooding our hospitals, flooding our schools, giving kind of poor service all over the place, and it's accepted because of the poor management of the country. So this is the area, this is a critical area, Mr. Gregoire, we need to deal with the management of Dominica.
I agree. And then Bernard, I don't think Landa will get any disagreement from you and I, because it seems to me, if you really want results, you have to plan, you have to organize, you have to manage, you have to control, you have to put the right people in the right places, you have to direct, identify the resources that are required for each of these program areas. Make sure you direct those resources to those areas. Make sure the right people are there to utilize the resources for the right things, so avoid waste, and make sure that you have results-oriented people in the right places to get the results that you want. You cannot have a disjointed approach to development, as Lando talked about the integrated development planning. You cannot have a disjointed approach where the left arm does not know what the right arm is doing. Somebody is building a road here, but in fact, what you need is an economic road there, which is going to open up this land so you can create so much productive activity, create so many jobs and so on. No point, in other words, this is the point I'm making. You have to have proper planning, proper management. And here's what I'm saying, and I'm going to repeat it again. For the avoidance of any doubt, as one of somebody likes to say, if you do the same thing the same way every time for 20 years, in the 21st year, you're not going to do it a different way. You're not going to get a different result. The economy is going to keep sliding. And there is absolutely no evidence, Thomson or Bernard, that in that budget we just saw, there is anything there in where the resources are deployed, especially knowing what has happened over the last 2-3 budgets. So supplementary estimates like DFA, every time it's coming back, and yet the resources are not that have been allocated are not being used completely, but coming back for supplementary estimates. It seems to me that I have not seen anything in this budget which is going to begin transforming the structures of our economy. I've not seen anything in there that's going to create foreign earnings. I've not seen anything that's going to build a productive sector that is going to utilize the local raw materials that we have, all our agri products. I've seen nothing in it that's going to do that to create a boisterous economy. I don't know whether you all have seen any of that in it.
Yes,
Anybody?
Mr. J, I fully agree. In fact, I'll tell you what I've not seen as well. To add to that list that you have, I've not seen any kind of risk, what I call risk planning. In other words, you're supposed to be able to identify the risks within the budget and then suggest ways in which you can mitigate, or you can kind of make those risks less obvious. So, for example, an obvious risk to the budget is the imposition of visas, not only by the UK government, but it's very likely that before the end of the financial year or the fiscal year, there will be additional imposition of visas by the Europeans. Now, you're supposed to be able within that budget to mitigate against it, because your every major capital project is dependent upon those resources. So towards the completion of your international airport, your housing product, your housing stock that you're trying to develop, every major capital project, the roads that you're trying to rehabilitate, every major capital project is on account of the CDI, and yet you're behaving as if it is business as usual. Well, maybe they have a surprise for us. Maybe they plan to bring in the $7 billion, and then that would take care of all of our problems, But really, what you need to do is to mitigate against those risks. Another very real risk to the economy is the fact that it continues to get smaller and smaller. It is shrinking. Okay. Now, how do you mitigate against that? What kind of measures do you put in place to ensure that you can increase this? Because that is exactly what is going to happen when your economy continues to shrink like this. The 40% that you now have coming mainly from tax revenues is going to shrink as well. Okay, so two things are going to happen. You're either going to borrow more from the people by imposing higher taxes, whether it's on gasoline products, on a shirt, or consumables or food items and so on. It seems that the easiest place those taxes are usually placed are on food items. So one day you go into the store and your bottle of oil that costs $7.50 all of a sudden is now $9.50. Okay, and that is usually that creeping type of increased wages. But that is what you're going to see happening: an increasing tax on the people, borrowing from more and more from the people. And bear in mind, the people's incomes are not increasing. It has been stagnant. It is fixed. So if you keep raising taxes, if you keep borrowing from them, at some point, they're going to hele suku, because they will have nothing, to rely on. So that, to me, is a real problem. And then the final risk, or one of the major risks to that whole budget again, is the debt burden. Right now, the amount we are paying is about $100 million. I have not seen the debt profile. It is quite possible somewhere within that debt there is a balloon payment. By that I mean an unexpected payment that has to come out in 1 year, and suddenly our $100 million repayment a year becomes 125 million, 140 million. How do you mitigate against that? So none of that is in the budget, and these are things that you need to build into your budget, because you want your budget to be credible. You want your budget to have some, and I said there is no policy, and somebody else echoed that. There is no real policy measures in there. So it leaves a lot to be desired, and we are just going through an exercise, listening to people speak, quite frankly, without adding anything of value or anything substantive to the arguments. But at the very fundamental, at the very basis of a budget, which is really government's revenue and expenditures, at the very basic level, you don't see any attempts to reduce spending. You don't see any attempts to increase revenues. And that should be at the very basic part of a budget. And none of that is there. So I think we're in, as I said before, and I'll say it again, we're in for a very rough year this year.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to add to that as I go to Bernard is that Thomson, knowing what is coming, what is very likely to come in terms of the impacts on the revenue stream from the CBI program. We know it is not going to last forever. Now it looks like it might shrink much more quickly than we think, when we thought it might have before. It looks like it might be, I hope it's not a death knell, but I mean, certainly it's going to take a hit. Now, if, Bernard, we were to do a stress test on an economy, knowing that you're going to lose even 50% of that revenue, and they say, well, what can this economy take? How much flexibility does it have? You know, if we do that kind of exercise, what will the situation be? I mean, as Thomson saying, how is it? Are your road projects going to stop? Is whatever you plan to go to the airport, is that going to stop? Is your housing projects going to stop? The stuff you're importing for your hospital and for your health sector, and so are those going to be reduced by 50%? What impact is going to have on the health and the well-being of the people and on the economy? And it seems to me that I'm thinking is going to have a major impact. And especially since we did not, over the years, take all that largesse, all that money from the CBI and reinvest it in the productive sector, in the real structures, the backbone, the pillars of the economy. So that today we would have had a thriving manufacturing sector, a processing sector, a water and beverages sector, a cannabis oil sector, or the essential oil sector, processing sector. These would have been going like we had them before. And so then if you gradually lose some of that revenue from the CBI program, you would not have felt the impact as what you might feel now if this thing suddenly falls out from under your feet. And so I'm saying, Bernard, that I think it's kind of late now to expect that this government now will on its own implement those ideas, or will be able to implement it with this, the resources that it had at its disposal. So I think it's going to have to be left to a new set of people with new ideas. And we have some young, brilliant people in Dominica and outside of Dominica who are ready and willing to serve the country, to make an effort and to give the best they can of all of what they have to the country to develop it, to see a better health sector, better economic sector, better industry sector, you know, better transportation sector, better sectors that makes life, the living a little better for everybody. Bernard, what are your thoughts? I'm just thinking that we need to have a change of regime.
I completely agree, and I think we all agreed that this administration is too far gone. They're too compromised. Their culture, their operational culture, their political culture is so bad that even if they wanted to execute, they can't, because they cannot bring in the right people that do not support them who was not in the team. They have too much to reveal. They can't bring in the people that allow them to keep political power in perpetuity. They can't now pivot to develop a meritocracy where the best people and the best ideas are placed in the positions to do the best job. It is impossible. We can tell, I could reveal every plan to this government on a great economic execution plan, very strategic, very meaningful, that could transform Dominica. And they could accept it wholesale. And I still guarantee you they would not be able to translate that plan, even with the best of intentions, into meaningful outcomes. They simply do not have the technical capacity built in. They do not have the ethical capacity. They do not have, most of all, the cultural attitude of inclusion, meritocracy, accountability, transparency that is necessary to develop an economy. Because an economy is not just built on economic factors, you know. To a large extent, an economy is built on trust, it's built on fairness, it's built on access, it's built on hope, it's built on aspiration. And all of those things, those underlying fuel in the belly of individuals that make them develop a country.
Bernard, here's what it is. The other thing you have to add to that, it takes people in certain positions at certain points in time to do the right thing, to take the right decision. If we were not at the NDC at the time, the World Creole Music Festival may never have happened. So you had the right people in the right place at the right time. Even if you were to provide a plan, if you cannot prepare an implementation program that involves putting the right people in the right place to take the right decisions and giving them the resources, don't put them there and then don't give them the resources. They must have the
Yes.
resources to get it done.
That's exactly right. It is about execution. It is about getting the right people who can execute, who are willing to work hard, who knows what it takes to make a team work, who knows what it takes to get people to be accountable, to put into place accountability systems. For example, we should have a report card from this government every quarter that hold them to 4 or 5 major objectives and say, report on those objectives. How many jobs have been created? Show us the metric. How many will be created next quarter? How many new industries, sectors have been launched? How many new entrepreneurial businesses have been undertaken? How many new ideas have been implemented? And every quarter, we need the government to be accountable. But that's what new people will do. New people will have new approaches. I say we have to be accountable to the people. We have to show a good plan to the people. And beyond words, we have to come every quarter or regularly to the people and say, things are different now. We are accountable to results, and here are the results that we're delivering. And we will be held to account and put the right people and the right resources to do so. We should have 4 or 5 strategic things. That's about all that we do. We should say, we plan to export energy in different forms, either direct electricity generation or use electricity to create green fuels and so on, and other chemicals that from electrolysis that we can export. So we export energy. We say we export energy, we export water, we export intellectual 21st century skills, and we export food as medicine, food and herbs as medicine to the world. 4 things, 4 strategic catchphrases and sectors that we then put $50 million into each of those, put a czar in place, somebody who knows this thing, who's responsible for this thing, who can deliver and can work with a team and have people reporting to him and reporting in regularly to the Dominican people on the progress on those 4 key sectors. That is what we must do. And I think the next step in our discussions on evolution, I think, is to now start preparing and for the Dominican people alternatives, alternative budgets, alternative strategic plan, alternative development plans. And in the next phase of our discussions, we need to start presenting to the Dominican people to make them know that there are people capable of developing those plans and there are people capable of executing those plans, and to start demonstrating an alternative to the government. Because people say, if not scared, who? That's a ridiculous question. If not passports, what? That's another ridiculous question. How can we possibly ask such a question about if we can't just sell passports, whereas the Dominican people can do nothing to improve our lives?
Here's the question: before scare, it was whom?
Exactly.
It was working better. Now, you know, well, that's the point. You see, and so, but you need to change the regime, because you're not going to get a different result if you do the same thing the same way. And all efforts have to be to nothing against any particular person or individual. It's just that if you have a system that you want it to work, you have to fix things. And right now, you need to put some different people in there with different ideas, different skills, capabilities, and to get the job done. Ronald, you know, we've been here a long time. It's time for us to maybe take our leave. I wanted to see if you had your final comments you want to make as we wrap up.
Yeah. What I would like to see happening is some organization take the initiative of putting together working groups to do just what Mr. Ito said, to develop strategic plans, to develop certain situations for development of Dominica, extensive plans, and how we're going to actualize those plans. So we can put those documents together and have documents, so whenever the change comes, there'll be already working documents. There are certain inconsistencies I want to talk about. One, how can you be generating so much CBI funds and your debt stock is increasing? How could that happen? Your debt stock is increasing and you're generating so much CBI funds? And the final thing I want to say, a very distinguished senior person, I was talking to them about the deployment of certain persons in different ministries. And I said, how could you have a doctor in the Ministry of Finance? The person said to me, Ministry of Finance is sick, so they have to go to the doctor to take care of the Ministry of Finance. Good night, everybody.
All right.
So that explains it. I get it.
Yeah, Bernard, your final thoughts?
Yes, I think we have expressed, all of us here on the panel, a clear a clear declaration that this government is not capable of giving us the Dominica that we want, the Dominica we have all dreamed of for many years, for decades. We have always dreamed and know in our hearts that we have smart, capable, hardworking people. We have had some historical disadvantages due to our topography, but we've always had hardworking, smart, educated people. Our people thrive everywhere around the world. They are in some of the most prestigious positions. They thrive well. Individually, Dominicans do well. Collectively, on island, we are dysfunctional, and to a large extent, that is due to the type of leadership that we select. That is due to the sort of cultural attitudes that those leaders embed into the society, and the cancer of this government is so extensive now that the patient is in dire need of a transfusion of personnel. It's in dire need of resuscitation. And so we cannot have that same doctor work on that patient anymore. It is clear that we need to get out of this dilemma and replace this government with people who are dedicated and committed to their island. Such people do exist in all levels of Dominican society, to the very young. I speak to young people, I speak to middle-aged people, I speak to older people. In every sector of Dominican people, they are the good guys. These people exist who are dedicated and want to transform the country, but they are oppressed, they are repressed, they are sidelined, because that is the manner in which this government can exert its control and keep exploiting a beautiful nation for their own enrichment and for their own power trip. And so that is the renaissance that's needed in our country. We need to get the goodbyes in out of every arena that they are, organized and voice our opinion that it's time to get back on track. We have been sidetracking our dream of a prosperous nation. It's time to get back on that track, and to make that happen, and to do so, we have to make some radical changes, starting with this government.
No, I certainly agree that there are many, many Dominicans at home and abroad who are quite capable, who would be really dying to come and help in any way they can to rebuild this country. And as we say rebuild, of course, Ronald made this analogy there of a doctor being sent to the finance ministry because it was sick, it was ailing. Is that the reason why they sent an engineer to the health sector, to head the health sector, to fix the broken health system? So,
may well be.
Well, who knows? Who knows? It's possible. Maybe there's good thinking there. Somebody wants to. I'm hearing all kind of things about the washing machines at the hospital not working well, leaks and all kind of things. Maybe an engineer is needed to fix those things. Maybe after they're repaired, then he can put back some wrong pegs in wrong holes to move the country forward. And by wrong pegs in wrong, I'm talking about new people to put in these new places. Thomson, your final word?
Yes, to say thank you, Mr. G, for the opportunity, but also to express what I've been sensing and feeling all along. I truly fear for the future of this country. I believe that we are at one of the worst places that we've ever been in our history. But what makes it worse is the kind of governance we now have. A prime minister who clearly is preoccupied elsewhere. A group of ministers who simply do not have the wherewithal, who don't have the necessary skills to turn this country around. So what we're going to see happening, and what has already begun to afflict our society, is the increasing social problems that we've been seeing. Increasing levels, increasing murders, in people, taking out their rage, in domestic violence cases increasing, and does the destruction of the family as we've seen it. That is going to continue to happen, but at an increasing pace, because there is in fact a link between a deterioration on the economy or in the economic side and a deterioration in your social area. In the language, we say that there's a linear relationship. In other words, one is moving in one direction, the other one follows in the same direction. And that's why I fear tonight. And unless something is done, what is really needed is some drastic action. We do not need a government that continues to hide behind the failure to do electoral reform, that continues to dodge and weave and do everything to entrench itself. The day of reckoning is now. The day of reckoning is here. And this government needs to accept that. They need to accept that they failed miserably, that the legacy, what will define this government, is the complete destruction of the Dominican way of life, the complete destruction of this country as we once knew it. That is what this government is going to be pasted with. So all of the 24 ministers, including the prime minister, that is your legacy, which you're not able to run away from, because history will remember you as a group of people who were certainly, out of the depth, unable to respond, unable to have answers, but take Dominica down a rat hole that now becomes a laughingstock of the world, that countries are looking to see how they can punish us and put us in our place. That is where we are. That is what this government has given to us. And so the important thing for us as a people is how we deal with this. How do we react? Do we allow ourselves to continue to be dragged down this way until Dominica is no longer recognizable? Or are we going to fight back? Are we going to push back? Are we going to say enough is enough, time for action, to do what is necessary, to have a change of government, to have new people in place that can rescue this country? There are too many Dominicans in too many places all over the world doing too many great things, building America, building England, building Guadeloupe, buildings all over the world. Dominicans are at the very best. And yet, Dominica is neglected. Dominica is not getting the best of its people because this government has done that as a deliberate policy to exclude, as you heard from Bernard and others, to exclude persons. And Ronald, I know the struggles that Ronald went through, one of the better people that we've had, and with his experience and his knowledge, but the kind of struggles he went through because of the perception that probably he was not supporting the government. And that is repeated over and over and over again. So I fear for this country, man. I really do. And the question is, and what I want to leave the Dominican public with is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to react? What are we going to do?
Well, here are my thoughts about what should be done. And that's why I want to leave the last word here tonight. While the plans are being made, and we know it's not difficult to make the plans, and Ronald talked about the integrated development planning. It's not difficult to do that. Some of these exercises have been done before. You can bring them up to speed, right? Some of them are just on shelves taking dust. So it's not a problem to bring a group of people together to get the plans fine-tuned and bring them up to speed. What I think needs to happen, and we need to bear in mind that we've come to a point in time where there's no other solution. You have to change the government. You must, because it is not working, and it is going to find a certain way to turn back. As I was just pointing out some of the comments made by Mr. Sheridan about what they intend to do about the CBI program. It's kind of late to talk about what you intend to do. St. Kitts put out something already. You cannot be talking about what you intend to do now. At the same time, while you're saying that public works people are still receiving something, you have $7 billion outside, and public works employees get nothing, saying you may not be able to pay them. Now, come on. So it is too late for that. I think what I would like, make us start somewhere, gentlemen. On Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, Pastor Rodney's church, bring all your supporters. I'm talking about all the political parties, Europe Freedom Party, bring your supporters here. That place can only hold 300 to 400 people. Fill up the place, have it overflowing outside, and let people together make their demand the way they want to go forward, what they want in those electoral laws, so that, and make sure that they get a petition signed, because the numbers are not going to just grow like that. You have to start off with filling up that room, and then the next thing you do, build something. You have a big document now, which the international community will have endorsed, because it will contain all of what the international committee has been recommending all of those years. They will endorse it. You will get their support. Go out there on Thursday, gentlemen. Bring your people. Dr. Andre, I'm pretty sure, will make a brilliant presentation to lead that discussion along the lines of summarizing what the people have said they want in the electoral laws and the regulations. If we can do that and come out of there with that, get a lawyer, the world will see you're serious. You have an attorney put this document together. You come and then you have 15, 20,000 signatures of petition saying to our government and to our attorney general, you're the people's attorney general, this is what we want to recommend that goes to the parliament for discussion and for passage. If you do that, all you'll be doing is having a level playing field. Political parties will go out and participate in elections and everybody have an equal chance to get to form the government. That is what you want. That is the first step. But it might require, because you can see this regime is not going to give it easily, it might require a few thousand people on the street asking for it. And then hopefully they will get it. Because the reason why you don't have it now is because of a famous email saying this guy is doing some ridiculous thing there, trying to change your winning legacy. You have to stop it, and they stopped it. So I think the people have to make up their minds now that they want it. They have to demand it. They have to go out and get it. And I think that's the next step. So, gentlemen, I'm looking forward to Thursday. I hope Pastor Rodney's church will be filled on Thursday morning and stay filled for the duration of that discussion and come out with a positive outcome. This is how the world is going to be judging what happens to all of these various groups and political parties in Dominica. What metal they made of. Can they bring their supporters there on Thursday? 5 people from each constituency will give you 100 people. Just 5. If you're the political to bring 5 or 10, you're filling up the place already. So, gentlemen, so thank you so much. I think we had a wonderful discussion tonight, very fruitful, very productive. I like all of the ideas that are coming out. Thank you to all the folks that are on Facebook and on YouTube with us still. Appreciate your presence there, and I want to shout you out and embrace you here tonight. Hope you will be with us next Tuesday for another program. I did send out an invitation and a feeler to the members, the young members of the parliamentary opposition. I think there's 5 of them. I'm hoping that if they're available and they can make it, come here and be on the Global View on next Tuesday night. Let us discuss their own thoughts on that budget, their own thoughts of how their parliament is working, their own thoughts for the future of the country, because I believe their thoughts may reflect the thoughts of the young people of Dominica at home and abroad. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Appreciate Bernard. Till next time, Ronald, Thomson, Lambi, Sherwin, everybody on Facebook, YouTube. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone, and good night to the public.
All right, take care.
Looking out my window, and I'm thinking of tomorrow, and I'm wondering what the future will be. Thinking of the children who are the victims of oppression, beaten down by wars and eaten up by starvation. I'm saying, when there's ugly will be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done.